Alrighty, everybody. Thank you so much for being with us today. My name is Robbie Hand, and I am a Senior Customer Success Manager here at WellSaid. I'm going to be one of our hosts today, ideally our primary host, but I've got Marta, my manager here. I'll let her introduce herself in just a second. I'm located in Wilmington, North Carolina, so I've loved seeing everybody introduce yourselves in the chat. Please keep doing that as you're logging in. And I'm also a father of a really cute golden doodle named Jules, who you might see make a cameo appearance in the hallway. Sometimes when she hears people talking, she likes to come in and say hello. But again, I'm your primary host for today. And then I'll pass it over to Marta to introduce herself.
Yeah, hey team, my name is Marta Mueller. I'm the manager of customer success here at WellSaid Labs. I'm out of Denver, Colorado, and mostly here to just kind of help answer any questions. I'll be live in the chat and then helping with Q&A here at the end. I am also a loving mother of two fur babies, my English Bulldog Jojo and my cat Charlie Alpha Tango. My cat will definitely be making an appearance, so keep your eyes out. But really happy to be here and excited to get started.
Yeah, two fur babies is wow. So good on you, Marta, for that. Quick agenda for today. We will cover some housekeeping items, so just general things that we'd like to see happen as webinar is happening today. Once we get into studio, we're going to cover studio and some best practices. Things like audition avatars will be a topic of discussion, pronunciation best practices, the beta version of studio, and then we've actually got some new things that we're going to talk through. So once we get out of studio, we'll work on the workshops that we'll be launching in August, and then create any additional space you need for Q&A at the end. For housekeeping items, we've already been doing this in the chat. Please keep the activity up around introducing yourself and making sure that we can hear where you're logging in from. I'd also love to hear if there's anything that you want to learn or have us cover specifically. We'll do our best to add that to what we've got set for today. Any questions you have can be submitted through the Q&A button. Again, Marta is going to be making sure that we walk through those as we go throughout the session today. And then at the end, I'll send a recording with a list of details about the workshops that we're launching in August. And then at the very end of the survey, once you leave, we're going to ask you a few questions for some feedback. For me and for the team, that's going to be really valuable. We've got a lot of live learnings and things that we want to develop over the next couple of quarters. So if we can hear from you and hear like what would make those sessions super valuable, that would help inform how we build out the conversations over the next few quarters. All right, so if we hop into Studio, once you log into WellSaid, you kind of start at the projects section, outlining or identifying all the different projects you have. And as a best practice in preparation for beginning a new project, we always highly recommend auditioning voices. So we have this really beautiful Explore page where you can work through identifying or interacting with the different avatars. And out of curiosity, I would love in the chat to hear if anyone on the call today has an avatar that they love or a performance style that they love. I feel like this is a great opportunity to kick it to Marta because she low-key has a reputation internally for an avatar that she loves. So Marta, would you mind sharing a little bit about your favorite avatar with us today?
Yeah, so I mean, for those of you who've been on a webinar with me before and in my team internally, you know that I absolutely just love Tobin. It's developed into a bit of a crush, so don't let it get that far, but he is just my favorite.
Yeah, so my favorite today is Jordan. I actually recently discovered this recently added section down here at the bottom and favored Jay earlier this week, but I just naturally kind of gravitate towards the promo and conversational styles that you see favored here for Jordan. Huge fan of just like how those two performance styles come out when we get in studio. So I'll probably be using Jordan today, but to make this performance section or the performance style make a little bit more sense, we've got 4 different styles that you can choose from when you're exploring the different avatars page. So narration, promo, and conversational are our top 3. We see folks gravitating mostly towards them when working in studio. And then we've got a character, more kind of dramatic performance style that you can use. But when you think about narration, think maybe a little bit more formal e-learning, online training type scenarios. Promotional is going to be your advertising or more commercial spaces. And then conversational is going to be very similar to narration, but it's going to be a little bit more informal. So like me and Marta going back and forth on this call today, very casual, very light, still see it in e-learning, maybe even learning and development for some internal trainings. But if we start to just hear kind of how these avatars sound, we'll start with narration in My Favorite Jordan.
In the final chapters of the novel, the author explores these themes more explicitly.
So again, here it's given a little bit of audiobooks, so a little bit more of a formal tone, and then a little bit of those kind of informative type sounds. If we look for promo,
To get started on the greatest night of sleep you've ever had, use the promo code Jordan at checkout.
so it sounds like an ad to me, which is really exciting. It's a little bit more energy, and it kind of matches that commercial tone that we were talking about earlier. And then if we go conversational,
For the most comfortable night of sleep you've ever had, head to Spinal Tap Mattresses.
perfect. So Jordan's showing all three different styles. As you work through the option of filtering here, and we'll do this in just a second, you'll notice that all avatars don't have all different styles. So for Marta's favorite, Tobin, you have the options of narration or promotional styles. So I highly recommend maybe filtering through the different sections to identify the actual avatars that you can use once you understand the sound that you like for the project that you're working on. So if we take performance style as an option for filtering, you've got all the styles that we mentioned before to be able to narrow down which avatars you can use for your projects. If we go regional accents, sometimes there's a very specific region that you want to stick to or that you want to market to. So you can use that as a filter when you're working in the Explore page for avatars. And then characteristics are a lot of fun for me because sometimes I don't necessarily know the performance style I want to work with. I kind of have like an energy or a vibe that I want to go for. So you can select some of these to help identify avatars. And then at the bottom, depending on the version of Studio you're hoping to work in, you've got the option to select as a filter for avatars. So once you've gone through the process of identifying the type of sound you want, the type of avatars you want, you can favor them. A good thing to know about favoring is that you can favor in the styles or performance styles that you actually like. So I've got both the conversational and promotional style tone for Jordan saved. And when we get into the workflow of creating a new project, you'll see how quickly I can add those to Studio. So let's do that. We get to projects, start a new project. You've always got the option to name the project. This subsection might look a little bit different. It says or gives the option of description now. So that can be any of the things that you see here, a subtitle to the project, client name. If you're collaborating, it could be your name or very descriptive thing to help you identify it very quickly. And then we're going to start in current today. We'll move to beta a little bit later. We are obviously going to identify the version of Studio that you want to use. So I'm going to say webinar. I'm going to start with current. And the next piece of the workflow is going to be understanding which avatar you're going to use. I'm going to breeze through this because we've already talked about it. Me and Jordan and promo are what I want to use for our session today. And then once you get into Studio, you can start to copy and paste the script that you want to be able to manipulate throughout this process. So I grabbed this sentence here. And the first thing I like to do is create a couple of takes to hear how Jordan's going to pronounce it. But before we do that, I would love to hear in the chat another little prompt where you think Jordan might struggle. So are there any words that stick out to you as places that Jordan might need a little help? And Marta, if you see some things, that'd be great to share.
Yeah, it looks like people are saying triage, resume, triage, expertise.
It's like you guys have done this before. So resume and triage are the two that I'm hearing the most. Let's create a take and see how Jordan does.
In the high-stakes world of medical triage, her impressive resume highlighted her unparalleled ability to prioritize and manage critical care situations with precision and expertise.
So you're right. Both triage and resume did not come out great. And we've got options for impacting or updating that. So if we take triage, there's a replacement section here in the top right where you just click the plus sign to create a new replacement, throw in the original text. I add the replacement or the option of the text in the replacement as well. And then if you click this button as for find suggestions, we have recently released, and you see it here, powered by Oxford Language, integration with Oxford Dictionary. So we're going to get some options of ways to pronounce the word triage, and you can test those before you add them. So let's hear how Oxford would suggest we pronounce these two versions.
Triage.
Doesn't sound too bad to me.
Triage.
They sound very similar, right? So I'm going to add this as a replacement. I'm going to save it to the team so that folks that are also working in WellSaid can use it. And then we will work with resume. So we'll add resume here, see what our options are.
Resume.
Perfect. Once it was like exactly what I needed. And obviously we didn't need two with it sounding very similar. So we'll stick with that one to start as well. Now we're going to take another take and let it load. See how we sound.
In the high-stakes world of medical triage, her impressive resume highlighted her unparalleled ability to prioritize and manage critical care situations with precision and expertise.
So it sounds pretty good to me. One of the things that I also like to highlight as it relates to replacements are the options within the resource section of WellSaid to maybe impact or update some of these more manually. So if we go here to resources and you're not finding what you want in the Oxford integration through the Help Center, there's a whole section here around pronunciations with a ton of different resources for you to work through to be able to maybe even update some of the things that you've seen or added with Oxford. And that could be small tweaks, and that would also probably live in this pronunciation library. So here are a list of different pronunciations I've added. You can add new replacements here. You can test them here, but this is going to give you access to all the different replacements you start to build out as you're working on the pronunciation section within Studio. So if we go back to this take, sometimes you hear it in one performance style and you love it. Sometimes you want to experiment with different performance styles. So you'll see at the top right, you've got the option to quickly change the style of the voice of the avatar that you're using. And you also have the option in the bottom right-hand corner to quickly toggle between any of your favorites and any of the styles that you have them in. So I would highly recommend, as you're exploring within the studio section, to try different performance styles, try different avatars to fine-tune and make sure you get the sound that you're looking for down here in your clips. The other things that I like to mention are the buttons that you see here kind of on the top and side. So these top buttons I like to think of in bulk, and then these side buttons associated with clips are going to be how you update or manipulate anything associated with that clip directly. So if I select both of these and I realize last minute that I want to combine these, or if I am working on maybe a paragraph and I decide to break it down into a few different sentences so I can fine tune the sound for each sentence, you'd be able to combine the sound of the clips into one clip using this button here. If I decided I want to move them, so maybe I like to work independently and I want to work on projects in Studio by myself, and then I want to push them to the different folders that I want them to go out to later, you could select the clips in bulk, move them to different folders, or even copy them to different folders. And then if you wanted to just download in bulk individual clips, because as you create more takes, you get a laundry list of clips, you could do that also. Another best practice as you're working through, again, the different sounds that come out of the takes that you create is to either delete or rename clips that you see or that you're working with. Renaming helps you identify the clip a little bit more quickly. Deleting keeps this list of clips a little bit more neat and tidy. And then a favorite that probably won't be as easy to duplicate here because we didn't change the sentence is this repopulate text option. If you're, again, working maybe on a project where you've got a paragraph, you're going to distill it down to a few different sentences that you want to manipulate at a time. The repopulate text or a script button is super helpful for making sure that you just easily get access to the script that you were working on when you took that clip. I want to pause for a second. Marta, any questions or things related to Studio that you want to cover before we start to work in beta?
Yeah, good question. So we did actually just get a really interesting question from Wendy, asking, how do you address pronunciations that differ based on the word that comes right before? Seems like sometimes fixes change based on the context. And so I can kind of take that as well. So essentially, whenever you select create, our AI technology is making predictions on how to pronounce this sentence or paragraph as naturally as possible. So it will take context to make predictions on how that word is pronounced. However, for words such as, resume or resume, content versus content, you are able to add multiple different pronunciations to that singular word. And if our AI isn't giving that correct prediction of how to pronounce that word, you can just select which pronunciation you would like. So, great question. Oh, and it looks like it just came in again. What if there are multiple entries for a word and a replacement? So, yep, you can just select which one you would like. Great questions.
Yeah, so if we even take this triage to try to duplicate or show, we add the other one, it should give us the option to choose between the two. Let's just add this, save team, and then to Marta's point, oh, there it is. You can choose between the versions of the word that you want to use. So great question. Obviously with this one, we heard them both. It's going to be very similar, but if you had words that were spelled the same but sounded different, you could choose the one that you wanted right within Studio. Any other questions that you feel like would be helpful to discuss live on Studio current version mod?
Yeah, another question that just came in. So you just did a great demonstration of how to show replacements that are automatically populated in those find suggestions for Oxford languages. What if a word isn't populated in the find suggestions tool? Maybe like an acronym or an industry specific word. Any suggestions there for how to get that correct pronunciation?
Yeah, so we're actually going to host a webinar the first week of August on pronunciation specifically. But a quick resource or a quick win for that is what I mentioned earlier. In the Help Center, you've got this pronunciations section. It gives you all of these options to either get the phonetic sound that you want, understand some of those best practices for replacements and respellings. So right within WellSaid, you've got resource to the Help Center that gives you either the respellings or replacements option that you could use as you're building out that sound, because you see here that Oxford gave us the sound, but if we were building out the replacement ourselves, this is where we could start in this section to put in some of those respellings or replacement options. So I'm happy to, in the feedback, if you want to add that, I can send you some of those details after this. Or if you're around next week or 2 weeks from now, sorry, we're going to have a specific conversation on pronunciations where we can cover all that. Great question, man.
Lovely. And we did just get a question in from Dustin around how to adjust a avatar's intonation. So I feel like that's a great leeway into chatting about beta. So Dustin will get into that in just one moment.
And promise we didn't pay Dustin to ask that question because
Yeah.
it's actually so yeah, let's move to a new project. We will call it beta webinar. Oop. And then we will select the beta version. So for this, I actually picked a poem or a snippet from a poem that I love from this guy named Wendell Berry. And let's see how Chase does for this one. So switch it up. Give Jordan a break. Be cool to know if any of you are familiar with Wendell Berry. It's kind of nerdy. But one of the things I'll note initially about beta that I personally love is the option when you slide over to queue. So the layout of everything looks very similar to what we just described. The new piece of beta is this queue section, which to Dustin's question is where you can start to manipulate some of those actual queues. I actually love the option of generating previews. I feel like, I just like get really excited and don't do as probably good a job at like keeping my clips cleaned up. So the generate preview section, I really appreciate because we can generate a preview. We can listen to as many of them as we want in beta and then save the ones that we like as actual clips. So let's listen to how Chase pronounces this on the first take, and then we'll make some cue edits.
So, friends, every day do something that won't compute. Give your approval to all you cannot understand. Ask the questions that have no answers. Laugh, be joyful, though you have considered all the facts.
Right. So I think that there's some places in here that I would like to maybe add some emphasis. For the different cues on the side, when you see loudness, think about like reading the word or the sentence because you can multiple select. Quieter or louder depending on the scale that you decide on, and we'll duplicate that in a second. Pace, similar, slower, faster. There's some parts in here I actually want to speed up. And then the actual pitch is where you can maybe start to find some emotion and you can make that higher or lower. So if we work backwards with pitch, I want laugh to be a little bit more exciting. So I'm going to select that and bring the pitch up. I want joyful to be set it kind of happy, but I want to bring that up as well. Ask the questions that have no answers. I actually want to speed that up for emphasis and see how it goes. Friends, maybe let's make it a little bit louder and see if it makes him sound a little bit more excited about the concept of talking to his friends. And then another thing that we haven't covered that you probably see over here are these non-verbal cues, and that's the option to make the punctuation pause either longer or shorter. So I'm going to make this a little bit longer. And I'm going to make this one a little bit shorter so we can get through to the end. And that. So now let's generate a preview and see what we get. It's a great poem, by the way, if you haven't read it.
So, friends, every day do something that won't compute. Give your approval to all you cannot understand. Ask the questions that have no answers. Laugh, be joyful, though you have considered all the facts.
So for me, this is pretty great. I've touched a lot of very specific things, and I was looking for a very specific sound. Some of the things that we find with avatars, and I think, Marty, you can relate to this, so some of them maybe speak a little bit faster and slower default than others. So I think Tobin has a little bit of a reputation for speaking fast. And if Tobin was presenting this and you wanted to say, we just want to select all of this and manipulate the loudness or the pace or the pitch, you could do that as well. And then at any point, if you ever wanted to start from scratch and clear all cues, you could do that as well. Because I like this clip, I'm going to save it as a clip. And then whenever I go back to script, it's going to tell me that I haven't saved some of them. I know that I should have the one clip down here at the bottom. Pretty straightforward, but any questions, Marta, that you're seeing on beta before we talk a little bit about sharing?
Yeah, can you talk a little bit more about when we should use beta versus when using the current version? Looks like we have some feedback in the chat about sometimes the beta version not being kind of the quality that they're looking for. Any recommendations on that?
Yeah, and you can chime in anything that you know extra on this, but current is going to be the best quality. So not the same opportunities for manipulating the words like the question that got us here, but using some of those phonetic and Oxford integration type pieces should help at least get the sound that you want. Because beta's in beta, there might be some hiccups every now and then, but it does give you the option to manipulate the sound. So I think, you've got the functionality you want to manipulate the pieces you want in beta, but it comes with maybe a little bit of risk. And then you've got kind of the consistency of the sound that you can get out of some of those manual or Oxford integrated replacements. There are also some things that we'll cover next week too, where you can use punctuation to help with getting maybe a certain sound. So we didn't get too deep into that today, but there are some other ways that you can try to manipulate sound and keep the consistency. But I would say if you're feeling less adventurous, keep current. If you might want to spice it up and try the Q's beta is a good option. Anything you would add, Marta?
Yeah, you nailed it. My recommendation is typically to use the current version by default, especially for those kind of longer form scripts. But the beta version is great for any kind of creative use cases, or if you just really need like one particular sentence to really be exclaimed with enthusiasm and louder, things like that. You can kind of jump into beta, make that adjustment for that one particular sentence or part of your script, and then kind of input that into your current project.
Nice. What else you seeing?
Great. Looks like people want to register for the pronunciation webinar. We'll be sharing that after. What about adding voices in different languages?
Adding voices in a different language. That is an API question or discussion, and I think you probably know more about that than me. It
Yeah.
is an option, but it's a separate product. So if you could talk through that, that'd be super helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. So we do have 5 additional languages that we can offer on Studio for our enterprise subscription tier. If that's something that you're interested in, you can reach out to our sales team and we'll post all of that information shortly. But right now, those 5 additional languages that we support, and let's see if I can get it, are Spanish, German, Portuguese, Italian, and French. So if those are of interest to you, then let's definitely chat.
Perfect. Yeah, that's a good one. Anything else that you're seeing?
Yeah, another question too, around timelines for adding in cues from the beta version to the current version. One thing that I can just kind of generally add is that we are constantly working to improve our different voice models, add additional bells and whistles, features, and everything like that. So I typically try to stray away from promising exact timelines, but it is constantly top of our list to kind of add all these additional features and improving our different voice models.
Nice. Thanks, Marta.
Yeah.
Anything else? Yeah.
Yeah, those are kind of the main questions for now. We can kind of keep moving forward and then save some more time for Q&A at the end.
Perfect. Also, thanks for helping with the chat. I definitely can't do this and that at the same time.
Yeah, the chat is going off. I love it. Keep it coming, y'all. We'll try to get all the questions at the end too. So if we're not answering your questions right now, we'll get to those the best we can. And if we can't even during this time, we'll follow up via email. So thanks, y'all.
Yeah, there's a way to save the chat, so I'm happy to do that. Last thing I like to mention as it relates to Studio is the option to share. Whether you're collaborating internally or externally, there are options for you to get access to what you're working on. So a public URL is going to be for folks that don't have access to WellSaid. Maybe you're working with a client or someone external that you want to share this with, and you can give them the ability to access with this link. When it comes to your team and in a team environment, you have the ability to share as you see here. So maybe you're working collaboratively and you want everyone to be able to see and touch and share all the things, download all the things. You can get full access. If you are in a scenario where you just want those folks to be able to edit and download, so maybe a little bit more restricted, no external sharing, you can restrict it to just can edit. And then sometimes you just want eyes on things. I do this to Marta all the time. Hey, can you go look at this? You can give the can view option. That is for a team environment and for an individual or member specific access. So if there's folks within your organization that you want to share with specifically, don't want to give it access to this project to the whole team, you can go through and itemize who those folks are and update their level of access. Next, I want to talk about the workshops. So I know I've given a lot of teasers for this. We've been working really hard on, again, developing this new approach to live learnings where we create more forums like this for people to be able to come in, ask questions, get updates and insights from me and the team. So who is invited? Absolutely everyone. Please tell everyone about the webinars. I'll have a discussion next week about how I can get this actually listed in the different places. And so there'll be some information coming out for that. But what we'll be discussing are just like live learning opportunities about things like Studio. So what we covered today, There will be times where we break out current and focus on current so that people can get as many questions answered for that. And then things like beta. Wednesdays will be like specialty sessions. So we've got the month of August, pronunciations happening twice. And we actually have some really fun things coming for that. Our product team's going to join, and they're going to help us kind of answer and speak to any questions you have around pronunciations. And then the 14th and the 28th is going to be on beta specifically. So, a little bit more ideally of a intimate environment to help specific people with like all the questions that you see in the chat. And the other thing I like to mention about this is it's going to happen ideally through the end of the year. So if you can't make it in August, schedule's packed. This is the schedule generally of how the sessions will be run through the end of 2024. And then Thursdays are office hours. I love the idea of office hours. You can pop in, you can pop out. If you got a question or you want, ideas for something, or you need like support on something very specifically, you can just pop in, ask that question, get that insight, and move on through your day. So office hours would be a little bit less structured, a little bit more free form, very specific to the needs that we have on the call. When does it launch? So August 5th is when we're targeting to have our first Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday launch of the WellSaid workshops. There'll be registration links added to the follow-up email. So I do have those listed today, but I am trying to find a couple of places where we can let them live. So again, if you can't make one, you can just register for the one that feels most appropriate for your schedule. And then another small teaser, which is really exciting based on the content I'm hearing about from the chat, is that we are actively working on a community. So that's a collaborative space for folks to come in, ask questions, network, and kind of like think through ideas, or just like get to know other folks that are using WellSaid. So I think the target for this is Q4, if I got that right earlier in my prep discussion with marketing. But just keep your eyes peeled, because there will be another opportunity again to keep up the energy of all the success and ways people are using and leveraging WellSaid. So more questions. Marta, what are you seeing? Are you seeing anything? And I can also open chat.
Oh, yeah. We got a lot of great questions. So for those of you who are able to stick around, continue asking questions, we can kind of nail down some of these one by one. So first great question that I saw, and a couple people chimed in on this in the Q&A button, is how do you make longer pauses between sentences? Any suggestions there, Robbie?
So I would say, depending on the version, in current, you have the option to add additional commas. So if you want to make, the space between two words longer, you can add a bunch of different commas. I know visually it doesn't look like it matches kind of like the standard way you would use pronunciations in a sentence, but ultimately, if you're trying to get that sound, you could use, say, a ton of commas. Obviously, you have the option to put that sentence or that blurb in the beta version and kind of expand it with like downloading that clip. But if you want to stay in current, that would be my suggestion.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, just kind of add on to that too, as Robbie showed, in beta, you do have the ability to add in that additional pause. But if you are using the current version, the additional punctuation, like Robbie said, is your best bet. Another suggestion too, actually, and Robbie, I would love to give a quick demo of this too. Would you mind jumping into Studio? And so if you have multiple different clips created, and feel free to just kind of create another example clip here, Robbie. So we can have two below there. Great. So when you select both clips to combine them, so if you select both and then select combine, combine.
Combine.
There you go. So below the file name, you can see that there is the ability to add in an additional pause between those two clips, and you can make that pause a little bit longer by 1.2 seconds. And so that can just kind of give you that additional pause. As you can see, by default, when you're combining those clips, it does just give a natural pause of 0.8 seconds. You can also shorten that pause, but this is just another great option. And that does actually lead into another question that we're getting about combining two different clips from two different avatars. And so we actually do see this pretty frequently as well in our customers maybe trying to create a dialogue scenario in either kind of your e-learning or online trainings or in an audiobook. You can absolutely create multiple different clips with those multiple different avatars or styles, and then use that same combine function that Robbie just showed to merge them into one single clip. And so it kind of just sounds more like a natural dialogue flow, exactly like you just did.
Yeah. So you just make a clip, add the two, and then combine them.
Mhm.
Perfect. That was a great question.
Yeah, great. Okay, awesome. Let's see a couple different questions going in here. I did get another question about, can WellSaid Labs recognize SSML tags? We do not right now. However, that is a great question or a great piece of feedback that we'll provide to our product team. In the meantime, our beta is kind of the closest feature to that functionality. Great. What about just kind of general best practices for acronym pronunciation?
Yeah, so I would lean heavily on this, and you can remind me, I think it's respellings for the phonetic section at the bottom. Yeah, here we are. So you've got a whole chart of ways that you can manually manipulate words and like get, the exact sound that you're looking for. If we're in Studio, it's going to be still the replacement section. You're going to add the original word, and then you're going to look at this guide to respellings and start to say, if I want like ooh or ah versions of o, adding in these examples to build out the sound that you want with a word. So again, it's kind of why we're like taking a whole separate section so that we can slow down and focus on building the different words. But this resource is huge because if you needed to, again, create the exact sound you want it for a word, you could grab some of these sounds from the reference chart and just build out the phonetic spelling of the word in WellSaid Studio.
Yep, love that. And really looking forward to your webinar on all of these moving forward. So that'll be great.
All the workshops.
Oh yeah, all the workshops. Lovely. Oh, and our teammate Kimaya just threw in that link to the chat. Thank you so much, Kimaya. Great. Another question we just got too is, do the number of question marks at the end of a sentence make a difference in the sentence sounding like a question? Same question for exclamation marks. And so I can kind of quickly take that too. Adding in more question marks and exclamation marks doesn't have a consistent impact on how the question will sound. I do kind of recommend just playing around. This is kind of when you really need to put on your director hat. Whenever you're logging into WellSaid Labs, I really recommend considering yourself a director. Sometimes it takes a few takes, a little bit of massaging, a little bit of that additional direction, right? So if you're putting in exclamation marks or question marks, that can help kind of change the overall intonation of a sentence. Also playing around with just additional punctuation. Putting quotation marks on the last word of a sentence will give an additional emphasis to it, as well as maybe you put a comma before that kind of last word or last couple of words. We'll add in that additional pause and change the intonation of that sentence. So again, kind of playing around there on the punctuation, and this is mostly referring to the current version. If you are in beta, I do recommend making those adjustments to the emphasis or pitch, things like that.
Yeah. So would
And
you say that the quotations help with emphasis if you want it on a word? I think the dash helps speak words together. So you could use that if you want to change the pace of something, maybe manually. Commas for pause. And I think periods have the same general impact as commas for pausing. But if you wanted to add, those are the four. Am I missing any for manual kind of cues that you can do in current?
yeah, that's punctuation is the name of the game, right? So all of those. Nailed it.
Great question, because I was like, will it do it with the question marks? I knew about those four, but yeah, today, that's great.
Yep, you nailed it.
Anything else?
Great. We just got a question. Is the combined feature in Studio only, or is it also available in the Maker and Creator? So yes, combined feature is available in all Studio, and then the Maker and Creative are the different tiers that also support the combined functionality. Great. Other questions here. Let's see. I think we got most of those. Sorry if I missed any.
Yeah, and I can download this chat. So part of the next 2 days will be kind of ciphering through who said what and making sure that we get a response. Decent segue to the resources that we have. So we've talked a little bit about the Help Center. That's always going to be a good initial place as a resource to look through different articles or even chat with support. So from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. PST, you do have the option to hop in and speak to somebody from our support team. If you have any like strategic or ideas type questions, customer success at WellSaid Labs is a newer email address that I'll actually be supporting you all in. So you can send any questions that you have around like respellings or pronunciations or things that you can't find maybe in the help center there. And then for technical questions, you still have access to the support team through support@wellsaidlabs.com and the chat. So these are some initial resources that we'll start with. Live learnings and all of the updates happening there will come out in the follow-up email along with the recording. And again, another forum for you to be able to come in, speak with our team, ask questions, get ideas and inspiration, and ideally see more success using WellSaid.
Yes. Love it. Well, I think we addressed majority of the questions. If we did miss any of your questions, again, please reach out to us directly. We'll also be following up with anything that we might have missed. And thank you so much, Robbie. I learned a lot.
Thanks to everyone who was here today too. I know it takes, a little bit of time out of your day, but it's super helpful to hear from everyone on, ways that we can support you and all the ideas ideally that you have in the feedback. And I think I saw some people that were interested in API, so we'll make sure that we get you to the right people. So give me maybe 48 hours to work through the chat. It was a lot of responses, but I promise we will get back to you, and somebody will reach out based on like what you are asking for at some point this week. But yeah, thank you everyone. Thanks for your help, Marta. I think I saw Kimaya and Marina helping with links in the chat. Really appreciate everyone. And we will see you in a couple weeks when we launch live learnings.
Great. Thanks, y'all. Have a good one.